Hi, welcome to ACI Worldwide's Payments Intelligence Whiteboard sessions. PSD2 is the European Second Payment Service Directive, and part of this directive includes strong customer authentication, more commonly known as SCA. In this whiteboard session, we will look at the basics around why SCA for e-commerce payments, the types of SCA that will comply with the regulation, the importance of SCA exemptions, a typical e-commerce authentication and payment flow. Then we will look at ACI Worldwide's payment intelligence solution that enables strong SCA and exemption strategies along with sophisticated fraud detection and prevention capabilities. So why SCA? Payments fraud has been a problem for consumers, banks, and global economies for decades, and the majority of card fraud occurs within the e-commerce channel. This is commonly known as card not present fraud, or CNP fraud for short. Over the last several years, there have been attempts to combat CNP fraud with industry initiatives such as 3D Secure, or more commonly known as Verified by Visa or MasterCard Secure Code, whereby consumer details like static passwords were used to authenticate payments. Unfortunately, this initiative failed to eradicate most CNP fraud given this security measure was optional and consumer details and passwords were easily compromised and stolen by fraudsters. The European Union member states, European Commission and European Banking Authority recognize that the cost of fraud is detrimental to their economies, consumer confidence, along with other reasons, and decided to enhance customer authentication by making it more difficult for fraudsters to compromise and infiltrate, and make it mandatory to authenticate all e-commerce payments. European Commission has set a deadline by when all European merchants and European banks must comply. So in summary, PSD2 SCA is a regulation designed to mitigate fraud and stop the bad guys, improve consumer confidence, and help grow European economies. What types of SCA will comply with the regulation? To accept payments that meet SCA requirements, they must meet at least two of the following: something the customer knows, such as a password or PIN, something the customer has, for example, a phone or hardware token, or something the customer is, such as a fingerprint or face recognition. This is known as multi-factor authentication. Now let's look at what is known as exemptions from SCA and why exemptions are so important. Consumers can become frustrated having to authenticate every time they make a purchase online, given it takes longer to complete the purchase having to check and enter passwords, tokens, and card details. From this frustration, customers can often abandon the purchase or decide to use another payment method or different merchant. So though SCA is designed to help stop fraud, it will inadvertently frustrate genuine customers. To help prevent consumer frustration, PSD2 SCA allows merchants and banks to exempt the consumer from SCA, essentially stop SCA under certain criteria. For example, a consumer may frequently make online purchases from the same merchant using the same laptop or smartphone and card, meaning the likelihood of this being a fraudulent transaction is extremely low. In this case, the merchant and the consumer's bank can evaluate the risk of the payment and make the decision to stop the consumer having to go through SCA. This is known as a frictionless payment and gives the consumer a far greater experience, and this is why merchants and banks should adopt an effective SCA exemption strategy and use this as a competitive advantage. So how do you implement SCA and exemptions? Enabling a compliant SCA will typically be achieved through the adoption of 3D Secure 2 and other methods. However, enabling exemptions from SCA is often seen as more complex and challenging to implement. Fortunately, ACI Worldwide has the proven technology and experience to enable an effective and compliant SCA and exemptions decisioning engine, and the solution is live today across many financial organizations throughout Europe. To understand the solution in a bit more detail, let's now look at a high-level use case. A customer decides to make an online purchase from an e-commerce merchant. At the checkout stage, the merchant will process the payment, which will go to a payment gateway and sometimes a PSP. Here, the details of the payment and customer can be passed to ACI's solution for evaluation. A real-time decision is sent back to advise that either SCA must be completed or the payment can be exempt from SCA. The transaction details are then passed on to the acquirer, and again there is an option to evaluate the risk using ACI solution to determine whether SCA is needed or exempt from SCA. The next stage of this flow involves the issuing bank's access control server, or ACS for short. The ACS passes the details to ACI solution for the final authentication decision, which would be to accept the merchant or acquiring bank's decision, invoke SCA through verified by Visa or MasterCard secure code, or exempt from SCA. Once the authentication process is complete, the payment is then processed, and it is at this point that ACI's payments intelligence solution also completes fraud checks on the payment. In summary, ACI Worldwide's payments intelligence solution enables easy integration to payment gateways, access control servers, and payment switches, behavioral profiles around the merchant, consumer, device, biometrics, and any other transaction element that can reveal anomalies, adaptive machine learning capabilities that produce scores to indicate the level of risk, sophisticated rules engine for today's market needs, and alert case management rich in features and functionality, and many more. Finally, it is essential banks and merchants implement an exemption strategy for consumer experience. The deadline is approaching, so consider acting sooner rather than later. Remember, PSD2 SCA and exemptions, if handled correctly, is a good thing. It's an opportunity for your organization to differentiate and win business. ACI can help by implementing the right technology and guiding you with our expertise. For more information, please visit www.aciworldwide.com or feel free to contact me directly at j.floyd@aciworldwide.com. Thank you.